My daughter banned me from her wedding at her future father-in-law's demand, so I exposed his true motive and watched him beg me to stay silent. You won't believe what happened at my own daughter's wedding. Or rather, the wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. My name is Lorraine Whitaker. I'm 52 years old, and I've spent the last 25 years of my life building a small flower shop in the suburbs while raising my daughter Emma as a single mother. I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like when my husband died in that car accident when Emma was just 3. I was wrong. Nothing prepared me for the phone call that would shatter everything I believed about unconditional love. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when my phone rang. I was arranging white roses for what I thought would be Emma's wedding bouquet, humming softly to myself as I worked. The autumn light filtered through my shop windows, casting everything in that golden glow that always reminded me why I loved this job. 23 years I'd been running Whitaker's Flowers, ever since Emma started kindergarten, and I needed something to support us both. Every petal, every arrangement, every satisfied customer had been building toward this moment. My little girl's perfect day. Mom? Emma's voice came through the speaker, but something was different, cold, distant, not the excited bride-to-be I'd been talking to just days before. Sweetheart, I was just working on your bouquet. The roses came in beautifully, and I think if we add some baby's breath. Mom, stop. The sharpness in her voice made me freeze, my hands still wrapped around the stems. We need to talk. I set down the flowers, a strange chill creeping up my spine. What's wrong, honey? Is everything okay with the venue? The catering? There was a long pause. In the background I could hear voices. Marcus, her fiancé, and someone else. Someone with a deeper, more authoritative tone that I recognized as Gerald Lockwood, Marcus's father and the man who owned half the private hospitals in our county. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about the wedding and I don't think it's appropriate for you to attend. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stumbled backward, knocking into my work table and sending several flower arrangements wobbling. What? Emma, what are you talking about? I'm your mother. I've been planning this wedding with you for 8 months. I know, and I appreciate everything you've done, but Gerald, Mr. Lockwood, he's explained some things to me about your past, things I never knew. Her voice was getting smaller, more uncertain, but she pressed on. He says it would be embarrassing for his family if certain people found out about what you used to do. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What I used to do? Emma, what are you talking about? You know exactly what I've done with my life. I've worked in this flower shop, raised you, volunteered at your school. He told me about the other jobs you had. Before the flower shop, the ones you never mentioned. Now she sounded like she was crying, but her words kept coming like daggers. About the arrests. About why you really started working for yourself instead of getting a regular job. I felt like I was drowning. Arrests? What arrests? I'd never been arrested for anything in my life. The worst thing I'd ever done was get a speeding ticket. Emma, sweetheart, I have no idea what he's told you, but none of that is true. You know me. You've lived with me your entire life. But that's just it, Mom. Maybe I don't really know you. Maybe there are things you kept from me to protect me, and now I'm marrying into a family that has a reputation to maintain. Gerald says if word gets out about your past, it could hurt Marcus's career, hurt their family business. The line went quiet except for our breathing. In that silence, 25 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees kissed better, proud moments at school plays, and late-night talks about boys dissolved into nothing. My own daughter was choosing to believe lies told by a man she'd known for 8 months over the mother who'd given her everything. So that's it then? I whispered. You're uninviting your own mother to your wedding based on rumors from people who don't even know me? It's not permanent, Mom. Maybe after the wedding when things settle down we can work through this. But right now, I just can't risk it. I'm sorry. The line went dead. I stood there in my flower shop, surrounded by the blooms I'd ordered special for my daughter's big day, and felt something inside me crack open. Not break. Crack, like an egg that's about to hatch, but you can't tell yet what's going to emerge. The next few days passed in a haze of disbelief and growing anger. I tried calling Emma back, but she wouldn't answer. I drove to her apartment, but she wasn't there, or wasn't answering the door. Marcus's car was in the driveway though, and I could see movement behind the curtains. My own daughter was hiding from me. I started asking around, trying to figure out what exactly Gerald Lockwood had told people about me. The answers I got made my blood boil. According to the rumors circulating through Emma's new social circle, I had supposedly worked as an escort in my 20s to pay the bills after my husband died, that I'd been arrested for theft at least twice, that I'd only started the flower shop as a front for some kind of money laundering operation. Every single word was a lie. I'd worked 2 jobs after David died, cleaning offices at night and doing data entry during the day, until I'd saved enough to buy the flower shop from Mrs. Henderson when she retired. I'd never even had a parking ticket, let alone been arrested. But somehow, Gerald Lockwood had convinced my daughter that her mother was some kind of criminal who would embarrass his precious family. The wedding was set for Saturday. By Thursday, I'd made a decision. If Emma didn't want me there, then I wouldn't go. I'd close the shop for the day, stay home with a bottle of wine, and try to figure out how to rebuild a relationship with a daughter who apparently thought I was capable of prostitution and theft. I spent Thursday night crying over photo albums, looking at pictures of Emma and me through the years, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Friday afternoon, I was sitting in my shop staring at the wedding arrangements I'd spent weeks perfecting, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Whitaker's Flowers. Mrs. Whitaker, this is Gerald Lockwood. I need to see you immediately. This is a matter of life or death. I almost hung up. This was the man who had poisoned my daughter against me, who had spread lies about my character to protect his family's precious reputation. But something in his voice stopped me. He sounded terrified. I have nothing to say to you, Mr. Lockwood. Please. I know what you must think of me, but I need your help. There's something is about to come out that will destroy everything. My family, my business, my son's future. I'll explain everything, but I need to see you in person. Can I come to your shop? Against every instinct screaming at me to hang up, I found myself saying yes. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the faint hope that he was calling to apologize, to tell Emma the truth. Or maybe I just wanted to look him in the eye and ask him why he'd felt the need to destroy an innocent woman's relationship with her child. Gerald Lockwood arrived at my shop 20 minutes later, and I barely recognized him. The confident silver-haired man I'd met briefly at Emma and Marcus's engagement party was gone. In his place stood someone who looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face was pale and drawn, and his hands were actually shaking. Mrs. Whitaker, thank you for seeing me. He looked around my shop nervously, as if expecting reporters to jump out from behind the flower displays. Is there somewhere private we can talk? I led him to the small office in the back of the shop, my heart pounding. Up close, I could see that his eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days. Whatever was happening to him, it was bad. I suppose you're here to apologize for the lies you've been spreading about me, I said, crossing my arms and trying to keep my voice steady. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Mrs. Whitaker, yes, I owe you an enormous apology. What I did was unforgivable. But right now, I need to ask for your help, and I know I have no right to ask for anything. You're damn right you don't. The anger I'd been suppressing for days finally started bubbling over. You convinced my daughter that I'm some kind of criminal. You made her choose between me and your family, and she chose you. Do you have any idea what that feels like? I do now, he said quietly, and something in his tone made me pause. Mrs. Whitaker, tomorrow morning, the Tribune is going to run a front-page story about me. About things I've done. Things that will not only end my career but likely send me to prison. I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. What kind of things? He took a shaky breath. For the past 5 years, I've been embezzling money from the Children's Hospital Charity Fund. Nearly $3 million. I've been laundering it through fake real estate transactions, inflating construction costs for hospital renovations, creating ghost employees. The FBI has been investigating for months, and a reporter named Jake Morrison has been tracking the paper trail. My mouth fell open. Gerald Lockwood, the pillar of the community, the man who'd been featured on magazine covers as a healthcare philanthropist, was confessing to stealing money meant for sick children. Why are you telling me this? Because Jake Morrison called me this morning. The story runs tomorrow at 6 a.m., right when the wedding preparations are supposed to start. He wanted to give me a chance to comment. Gerald's voice was barely above a whisper. Mrs. Whitaker, I know you have connections at the Tribune. Your late husband used to work there, didn't he? And I know Jake Morrison's editor Patricia Chen considers you a friend. Suddenly I understood why he was here. David had indeed worked at the Tribune before he died, and I'd maintained friendships with several people there over the years. Patricia Chen and I served on the hospital volunteer board together, but the audacity of what Gerald was asking hit me like a freight train. You want me to call in favors to kill a story about your crimes? The same crimes you committed while spreading lies about me to protect your reputation? I know how it sounds. I know I don't deserve your help. But if this story runs tomorrow, it won't just destroy me. It'll destroy Marcus too. Your daughter's wedding will become a media circus. Emma will be humiliated in front of everyone she knows. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward into the wall. Don't you dare try to manipulate me with my daughter's happiness. You're the one who put her in this position. You're the one who made her choose sides, and now you want me to save you from the consequences of your own actions? Mrs. Whitaker, please. No? The word came out louder than I'd intended, and Gerald actually cowered. You destroyed my relationship with my daughter to cover up the fact that you're a thief. You made her believe I was the criminal when all along it was you. You made her ashamed of me, afraid of me, convinced that I would embarrass her on the most important day of her life. Gerald was crying now, actual tears streaming down his face. I was desperate. I knew the investigation was closing in, and I was terrified that someone would connect the dots. Your husband had been friends with half the investigative journalists in the city. I was afraid that through your social connections, someone would ask the right questions, notice the wrong things, so I made sure Emma would keep you away from anything connected to my family. The confession hit me like a physical blow. He hadn't just randomly decided to destroy my reputation. He'd targeted me specifically because he was afraid my connections might expose his crimes. He'd stolen my daughter from me as a preemptive strike in his war against accountability. Get out, I whispered. Mrs. Whitaker, please. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but think about Emma. Think about what this will do to her. Get out, I screamed. And this time Gerald scrambled toward the door. But just as he reached it, he turned back. I'll do anything, he said desperately. Anything you want. I'll tell Emma the truth. I'll confess everything to her right now, before the story breaks. I'll get on my knees and beg her forgiveness on your behalf. Just please, help me delay this story. Give me time to figure out how to minimize the damage to the kids. I stared at him for a long moment, my mind racing. Here was the man who had stolen my daughter's love, who had painted me as a monster to hide his own monstrosity. He was offering me everything I wanted. Emma's apology, the restoration of my reputation, revenge against someone who'd wronged me terribly. But what he was asking in return was for me to help cover up crimes against children. Money that was supposed to go to pediatric cancer research, to new equipment for the children's ward, to programs for families who couldn't afford treatment. He'd stolen it all. And now he wanted me to be complicit in hiding it. There's only one thing I want from you, Gerald, I said finally. And it's not what you think. He looked up hopefully. I want you to call Emma right now. Tell her the truth about what you did to me and why. Tell her about the embezzlement, about the investigation, about everything. Let her make an informed decision about whether she wants to marry into your family with full knowledge of who you really are. His face went white. But if I tell her about the embezzlement before the story breaks, she'll call off the wedding. Marcus will hate me. My son's life will be ruined. Your son's life is going to be ruined anyway when that story runs tomorrow morning. At least this way, Emma won't be blindsided. She'll have a chance to decide if she wants to stand by Marcus through this, or if she wants to get out before she's legally tied to your family's disgrace. Gerald was shaking his head frantically. There has to be another way. What if I just tell her the truth about you? What if I confess that I lied about your past, apologize, get you invited back to the wedding but don't mention the other thing until after? No. I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. It's all or nothing, Gerald. You tell her everything, right now, or I call Patricia Chen myself, and make sure she knows you tried to manipulate me into helping you cover up crimes against sick children. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. I could see him calculating, trying to find some other option that would save his reputation, but then his shoulders sagged in defeat. Will you come with me when I tell her? I considered this. Part of me wanted to see Emma's face when she realized how thoroughly she'd been manipulated, but a larger part of me just wanted my daughter back, without the satisfaction of watching her world crumble. No, I said finally. This is between you and her. But Gerald, you're going to tell her tonight, before the rehearsal dinner. And you're going to tell her she needs to call me immediately afterward. He nodded miserably and left my shop looking like a man walking to his own execution. I spent the rest of the evening pacing my apartment, jumping every time my phone made a sound. At 11:47 p.m. it finally rang. Mom? Emma's voice was thick with tears. Mom, I'm so sorry, I'm so incredibly sorry. I closed my eyes and felt something inside my chest finally unclenched. Oh, sweetheart. He told me everything. About the money, about the investigation, about why he lied about you. Mom, I can't believe I chose them over you. I can't believe I thought you were capable of. God, what kind of daughter am I? You're the kind of daughter who wanted to believe the best about everyone, I said gently. Including me. You didn't want to think your mother had secrets that could hurt you, so when someone presented evidence that I did, you tried to protect both of us by keeping me away. But I should have asked you. I should have confronted you directly instead of just accepting what he said. Yes, you should have. But Emma, you're 25 years old, you're in love, and you got caught in the middle of something much bigger and more complicated than you could have imagined. Gerald Lockwood is a master manipulator who spent years perfecting the art of making people believe what he wants them to believe. There was a long pause. Mom, the wedding is tomorrow. Or I guess it was supposed to be tomorrow. I don't know what to do. Marcus is devastated. He had no idea about any of this. He's been crying for hours, talking about how his whole life has been built on a lie. My heart ached for both of them. What do you want to do, sweetheart? I want to postpone it. I can't walk down the aisle knowing that half the guests are going to find out about Gerald's crimes in tomorrow morning's paper. I can't start my marriage in the middle of a scandal that I didn't even know was coming. And I need time to think about whether I can really marry into a family where this kind of deception is possible. I was proud of her for that decision, even though I knew how much it must be costing her. I think that's very wise. Mom, will you help me? Will you help me figure out how to cancel everything without completely destroying people? I know I don't deserve your help after what I did, but... Emma, stop. Of course I'll help you. That's what mothers do. The next morning, the Tribune's front page featured a massive headline. Local hospital executive embezzled millions from children's charity. Gerald's mugshot stared out from newsstands across the city, and by 8 a.m., news vans were parked outside the church where the wedding was supposed to take place. Emma and I spent the day making phone calls, canceling vendors, dealing with confused relatives and friends. Marcus helped as much as he could, but he was barely holding himself together. The young man I'd watched fall in love with my daughter over the past year was discovering that his entire childhood had been built on stolen money. By evening, when the last vendor had been notified and the last out-of-town guest had been informed, Emma and I were sitting in my apartment, sharing a bottle of wine and talking like we hadn't in months. Mom, how did you know? She asked. When Gerald came to you for help, how did you know the right thing to do? I thought about it for a moment. I didn't, honey. I was angrier than I'd ever been in my life. Part of me wanted to help him just to watch him dig himself deeper. Part of me wanted to refuse just to spite him. But then I realized that this wasn't really about Gerald at all. It was about you, and about the kind of person I wanted to be. What do you mean? I mean that I could have gotten my revenge by helping him cover up his crimes and then exposing him later. I could have let you marry Marcus without knowing the truth, then watched your marriage implode when everything came out eventually. But that would have meant putting my own hurt feelings ahead of your well-being. And despite everything that happened between us, I'm still your mother. Your happiness and your ability to make informed decisions about your life will always be more important to me than getting even with people who've wronged me. Emma started crying again, but this time they seemed like cleaner tears. I love you so much, Mom, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for what I put you through. You don't need to make up for anything, sweetheart. You just need to remember this feeling the next time someone tries to convince you that the people who love you aren't who you think they are. 3 months later, Gerald Lockwood was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The hospital system he'd built was sold to pay restitution to the Children's Charity Fund. Marcus, who had been completely cleared of any involvement in his father's crimes, decided to go back to school to become a teacher rather than continue in the family business. Emma called off her engagement to Marcus not because she didn't love him, but because she realized she needed time to figure out who she was when she wasn't trying to fit into someone else's vision of her life. They remained friends, and I suspected they might find their way back to each other eventually. But for now, Emma was focused on rebuilding her relationship with me and figuring out what she wanted her future to look like. My flower shop became busier than ever after the scandal broke. Apparently, being the woman who'd stood up to Gerald Lockwood made me something of a local folk hero. I hired 2 part-time assistants and started donating a portion of my profits to the Children's Hospital Charity Fund that Gerald had looted. 6 months after what would have been Emma's wedding day, she moved back home temporarily while she figured out her next steps. It was awkward at first. We were both different people than we'd been before all this happened, but gradually, we found our rhythm again. One evening, as we were closing the shop together, Emma said, "Mom, I've been thinking about something Gerald said, about how he targeted you because he was afraid your connections might expose him. What about it?" Well, he was right, wasn't he? If you'd been more involved in his social circle, if you'd been talking to your journalist friends about the wedding, about Marcus's family, someone probably would have started asking questions. You probably would have uncovered his crimes months ago. I paused in my arrangement of the next day's display. Maybe. But Emma, that's not why he really went after me. What do you mean? I mean that Gerald Lockwood spent years building a reputation as a pillar of the community while stealing money from sick children. The idea that someone like me, someone working class, someone without a college degree, someone who'd raised a child alone, might be welcomed into his family as an equal, was probably more threatening to him than any journalist. He didn't just want to neutralize a potential threat to his crimes. He wanted to put me in my place. Emma was quiet for a long moment. You know what the saddest part is? What? If he'd just been a decent person, if he'd welcomed you into the family and treated you with respect, you never would have had any reason to look into his background. His own prejudice and paranoia are what ultimately brought him down. I smiled at my daughter, proud of the wisdom she'd gained from this painful experience. That's exactly right, sweetheart, and that's why I'm not angry anymore. Gerald Lockwood destroyed his own life trying to destroy mine, and in the process, he gave me something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. What's that? My daughter's respect. Before all this happened, you saw me as someone who needed to be managed, someone whose rough edges needed to be smoothed over to fit into your new life. Now you see me as someone who can handle herself in a crisis, someone whose judgment you can trust, someone worth fighting for. Emma hugged me tightly. I always saw you that way, Mom. I just forgot for a while. As we locked up the shop and walked to our cars, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this point. A year ago, I'd been a single woman running a small business and trying not to think too hard about what my life would look like when my daughter moved on to her own adventures. Now I was a local celebrity, a successful businesswoman with a growing company, and most importantly, the mother of a young woman who had learned some hard lessons about trust, loyalty, and the difference between reputation and character. I never did get to attend Emma's original wedding, but 6 months later, when my best friend's daughter got married, Emma and I worked together to create the most beautiful floral arrangements our little town had ever seen. As we watched the bride walk down the aisle surrounded by flowers we'd grown and arranged with our own hands, Emma whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I squeezed her hand and whispered back, "I could never give up on you, sweetheart. But thank you for not giving up on us." The truth is, I learned something important during those dark days when I thought I'd lost my daughter forever. I learned that I didn't need anyone's permission to be proud of the life I'd built, the woman I'd become, or the daughter I'd raised. I learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you opens the door to the best thing that's waiting for you. And most importantly, I learned that I never ever need to beg for love from people who only know how to take it away. Today, Emma and I run Whitaker's Flowers together. She's applying to graduate school to study nonprofit management, with plans to work for organizations that serve children and families in need. Marcus is finishing his teaching degree and volunteers at a literacy program for underprivileged kids. They're not together romantically anymore, but they've both found ways to turn the pain of Gerald's betrayal into purpose. And me? I'm exactly where I always was, a woman who loves her daughter, runs an honest business, and sleeps well at night knowing that I've never had to compromise my values to protect my reputation. The difference is that now I know my daughter sees me the same way, and that knowledge is worth more than any wedding invitation ever could be.